Now we have two lawyers.
We're well represented.
All right, we'll call the meeting of the Norwalk Housing Corporation to order. I'm supposed to do a roll call, and I'm here, John Igneri, Lisa Cooper, Kelly Bloom, and we also have a new member, David Ugelman. And I've asked David to tell us a little about himself, so we're all up to date.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. Hello, everybody. I was on the Common Council for 2 terms, and got to know Brian through being on the Common Council and the work that the council would do with redevelopment. I am recently, within the last year, minted attorney. I practice special education and child welfare law, and I work a lot in the juvenile courts doing that. I've lived in Norwalk for since 2008. We love it here, and I'm really excited to be a part of this group and to serve again this wonderful city.
Well, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
On completing the roll call, we'll see is there anyone out there that wants to comment about tonight's Norwalk meeting? No public participation. I'll move on to item 4, administration, approval of the minutes of the September 16th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Okay. Kelly, does anyone have any comments, changes, spelling corrections? No? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the September 16th minutes? All right. That's done. We'll move on to
Abstention, just for the record.
Okay. You mean you didn't read the minutes?
I read them.
Before the meeting?
I feel that I'll
Okay.
abstain on this one.
Okay, just joking. Item 4, administration. We're going to B, approve the Norwalk Housing Corporation Statement of Revenues and Expenditures and balance sheets for all funds for year to date September 30th, 2025. Where is Eugenia? There she is. I turn it
Thanks,
over to
John.
you.
For the year to date, September 30th, the Norwalk Operating Fund 400 had revenues of $1,800 and expenses of $260, which resulted in a net operating surplus of $1,500. And then the balance sheet for this fund had assets of $764,000, liabilities of $371,000, and net assets of $393,000. And the Norwalk Revolving Loan Fund 450 had an operating surplus of $500, and its assets totaled $120,000, and total liabilities and net assets were also $120,000. And that's all.
That's it? Okay.
Yes.
Any questions? Any thoughts, comments? Seeing none, I'll make the motion to approve those, approve the year-to-date financials. All in favor? Unanimous? Hey, we have a full board. Nice. Moving on to item 5, any business, new business, old business to discuss? Seeing none, I'll go to item 7, 8, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Everybody. That's good. We will adjourn this meeting and go on to the Norwalk Redevelopment meeting. Thank you. Turning the page. I'll call to order the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency meeting. Roll call. We have full board here tonight. It's you don't need me to read the names. I believe you have them. Item 4, I'm sorry, item 3, public participation. Anyone out there want to comment about tonight's agenda? No? Seeing none, we'll move on to administration, which is the approval of the minutes of the September 16th, 2025 special meeting. Anyone have comments? Changes? Corrections? Seeing none? I think we had a motion. I made the motion. All in favor? Aye. One abstention.
Abstention.
We'll move on to item B, financials. Approve the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency's statement of revenues and expenditures and balance sheets for all funds for year-to-date September 30th, 2025. Eugenia, you're back on stage.
Okay, thank you, John. For the year-to-date September 30th, the operating fund 100 had revenues of $401,000 versus a budget of $380,000 for a favorable variance of $21,000. The actual expenditures were $400,000 versus a budget of $440,000 for a favorable variance of $40,000, which is due to lower personnel and administrative expenses. The actual operating surplus of $1,000 versus a budget of $60,000 resulted in a favorable variance of $61,000. Then going on to the balance sheet for Fund 100. At September 30th, Fund 100 had $3,801,000 in cash, accounts receivable and due to other funds, property and equipment and right of use asset, and $650,000 in net loans receivable, and $4,500 in other assets. The fund has $2,067,000 in liabilities and $2,389,000 in net assets. The financial statements for the other funds are also attached. There are no major variances except for Fund 300 and Fund 500, which had operating deficits of $110,000 and $73,000 respectively. For Fund 300, as soon as the agency's HUD Community Development Grant is approved for this year, then we will bill and, draw down the 110 and we'll get reimbursed. And for Fund 500, the $73,000 was already billed and reimbursed by the city in October.
And if I could just add one little point, just reinforcing what Eugenia had mentioned about the HUD reimbursement, the 110,000. One of the things that we've been working with, with the new changed administration, is the availability of the CDBG funds, which I know we've talked about at the board. And one of the things that we've had to watch out for is our administrative costs. So that's roughly 20% of our annual allocation. And that actually hasn't been being reimbursed, is what Eugenia is effectively noting. And that we're logging these expenses in anticipation of those funds being reimbursed. With the recent government shutdown, we were monitoring the situation, but we just received an email today from our consultant that other communities in the nation are actually starting to get those agreements.
Oh, good.
So we're feeling pretty good. Things change daily in this current political environment, but we've been monitoring that. The one thing that is a good point to note, though, is we allocate about $400,000 across the board for personnel costs related to our CDBG program. And the larger portion of that through the city neighborhoods is actually, we still have money from past years that we've been able to use to make sure that we're not creating too big of a hole in our financial plan. It's really just that specific admin dollars that we're waiting for reimbursement. But I'll update you next month, and hopefully by then we'll have all of our agreements in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Are you, Eugenia, you completed?
Yes, that's.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the agency statement of revenues and expenditures for the year to date through September 30th? Lisa, any questions? No? All in favor? Approved? Unanimous? Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, business, and the design review of 19 Day Street. Turn it over to you, Brian.
Great. Well, thank you. So yeah, we're joined tonight by our applicant team from 19 Day Street. This project, I'll let them, obviously, as our typical workflow, have them give a little brief presentation. Unfortunately, our design review consultant wasn't available to attend the rescheduled date tonight, but I have John Hopkins from our office who's been, working with him very closely to provide any updates on kind of unresolved issues. This project has already gone to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they've listed a number of conditions which were included in the agenda packet alongside the BFJ memo. So I think we're really focused on, those remaining conditions that our design reviewer may not have addressed, which I only think there's like a couple of them, but I'll let our applicant team first give a brief presentation on the project, and then John can kind of fill in any details from there. And I assume that'll be you, Colin, right? All right, if you want to come off mute, I don't know if you're on. You're welcome to share it.
Yeah, sorry, we still have a lot of people pushing here. So, yeah, there's not usually an I in team, right? But tonight it's just me. So, let me open out that screen. Zoom always gets me. So 19 Day Street, for those not familiar with the project, is down here in South Norwalk, just adjacent to Ryan Park. We're talking about this parcel, kind of shaped like Oklahoma. And it's primarily surface parking at the moment. The 1420 Distillery is this back building. And then there's an existing built bar building, modular construction that was built several years ago on the site here prior to the elevation of Day Street. And then there's a small liner building kind of buffering the parking lot on Day Street. Giving you a really quick aerial tour of an area that you probably know pretty well. We can look at the existing building condition. So this building is the 19 Day Street building, and that is in the new proposal that's going to remain. The proposal calls for the demolition of this liner building and the replacement along the street here with a new structure, and then also the demolition of the rear building to provide more parking for the increased density on the site. Traffic circulation is still gonna operate in much the same way, just with a little bit of reconfiguration internally, and you'll see that from the plans that I'll show you in just one moment. So coming back to the pages. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see the outline of the former distillery building here that would be removed, creation of additional parking back there, slight reconfiguration of the electrical utilities on site, and a little bit of reconfiguration of the parking. But essentially, you're looking at the same in from the northern end of Day Street into the site, passing under the new footprint, and then back into the site where you can make a full loop and then come right back out to the street. A little bit of a dead end here, but we've got a turnaround. These would likely be assigned spaces for the ownership or however they're managing the parking. And then there's an additional 10 spots in excess of what we tabulated the zoning requirement at that are not calculated into the zoning requirement, but do provide a slight excess of parking for multi-bedroom units, likely based on their management plan. Going up to the next level above the street, the existing building is remaining unchanged. New building, sorry, I should cover a little bit more at street level here. Streetscape is basically remaining the same. We're keeping the existing trees that are out there. We'll do their best to protect those for construction. Kind of a terraced garden approach to providing a pedestrian entry plaza here that's under the overhang of the building. Some additional terracing over here and under building gardens. So shade tolerant plants would be selected. and basically just providing a nice elevation above the public walkway and you know, a more of a sense of entry as best you can with this style building. Leasing office and mail utilities down here on the first floor, some bicycle parking. And then trash would be in an enclosed room over here on the property line, and that would be brought out by building maintenance staff to be serviced by the trash contractor. And then the large vehicle can actually enter the site completely and then pull around and exit back out onto Day Street without reversing into the street. So we think that's a positive for that. Existing entry to the 19 Day Street building would remain unchanged. We've got an egress stair serving the new building that posts down here. And that gets out through this sloped walkway that gets you out to Day Street. Up on the second floor, got a little bit of a common amenity space, some larger units on this level, just above street level. And then a typical floor, some 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a 3 bedroom and a 1 bedroom plus. Going up, we get to some loft units where these are 1 bedroom lofts, so they've got an additional space up in the half story above. Some step back terraces that provide some views towards Soundview Landing. And then at the loft level, we get some relatively modest lofts with views out to the unit below and out to the east and the west. As to what this thing looks like, we've got the drive unders, tower element, and a very simple shed roof. The material, we're thinking this is a brick material with linear wood cladding accents. This is the materials page. So the number 3 is the gray brick being seen as smooth. We're looking at maintaining the existing fenestration vernacular of the existing building, so picking up on the multi-pane windows, using the integrated HVAC grill, but changing the linear metallic cladding for a brick aesthetic. And then the upper portion would be this rib metal panel for the kind of bent gable form that's sitting on top of the brick building, so that creates this base, the midsection of brick, and then this top section of the gable structure. Multi-pane window example, cable rail for the safety rails. Excuse me, and then a simulated wood grade cladding can be seen there, and that would be used as some of the accent materials for the tower, and that plays off of some of the spandrel panels on the existing building, as well as the existing egress stair in the existing building. On the backside, a little bit more restrained composition, the vertical ribbed cladding, and then you can see the clearance below, and we've got the shop front and the linear wood cladding on the backside. Kind of in a strictly elevational view, one of the things we made sure we addressed was the vertical clearance at the drive entries. So we made sure that would accommodate the trash service, as well as the move in, move outs, and emergency vehicle access to the rear of the site. So that's met those clearances, provided that. And then you can see how the Day Street is sloping as it was built up towards the intersection that was raised several years ago, and then slopes down back to meet the existing topography of the neighborhood. And then we're ramping up slightly to get into the site under the building. So that leaves this building access as an elevated platform slightly. One of the things that did push that lobby up was there is a bit of a flood zone issue in this area. So need to make sure we're out of the flood zone with those building entrances. So that's one of the reasons why that's not stepping down and meeting the street directly, is because we need to elevate that lobby to comply with the city's flood regulations. One of the outstanding conditions that you're probably going to hear about from Mr. Hopkins is, I believe, zoning commission resolved that this elevation, which is the property line elevation further down Day Street, we had proposed a series of panels very similar to what was done at the 10 Monroe Street project on South Main, and that kind of simulates the windows. They had preferred a mural. That was one of the things that had been discussed. So we don't have any objections to that. So we would revise this to provide some sort of a palette for a mural installation with some lighting. I don't think we're too far off the property line, but we'd be able to get something artistic in there as that was the request. Typical units. Got as you saw, as I was flipping through, we've got a mix of kind of 1 bedrooms, 1 bedroom plus, 2 bedrooms, some 3 bedrooms, and some loft units. So a decent mix of units there, and variety of sizes. So really providing a diverse mix of units within this new building. And parking is 1 per unit, and slightly above if you count the tandem spaces, but those aren't part of the zoning requirement or the tabulation that was submitted to zoning for those purposes. So that pretty much includes the high level overview. I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability and respond to anything that Mr. Hopkins might have to say with the peer reviewers' comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or points of clarification before John talks a little bit about the design reviewers' thoughts?
Is this all market housing, or does it have 10% affordability? I don't know how many units there are. If you could just explain what the idea of the
Sure.
you're appealing to.
Sure. It is market rate. We're following the city's affordability guidelines. I think it's 20% affordable, and we are using the provision that allows us to do the one space per unit, parking space per unit, to reduce the parking supply. And then we're also taking a credit for the quarter-mile distance to the Sono train station. So because of transit adjacency, that's helping to reduce the parking requirement on site, which is helpful.
And this affordability is following workforce guidelines for the city?
Correct.
So we're talking about what income levels at this point? I'm not sure I'm up to date on that.
Nor am I. So that would be a question for the development team, but it's whatever the city of Norwalk guidelines reflect for those credits.
And I'm sorry, how many units was it?
It is 32 new units, and then there are 56 existing. So it's a total of 88 units on the site.
So that with the 20%, it'll be approximately 16 or 17 units.
Total, yes. I believe that's slightly off because the 32 is we're only adding new units to the site, right? So it's on the 32 new units and not on the whole site. The whole building, I believe, already has some affordable units in it, so those aren't changing. It's just the delta is just the contingent of new units. So it's whatever if it was 20%, that's going to be 7 units on the new one, if that's how that worked out in the application. Which I believe it's 4,000.
Thank you.
7.
Any other questions?
Is the existing unit being renovated in any way, or is it just staying the same?
The existing building is staying the same.
Okay.
So which is this building? So we're not seeing any changes to that building, other than, site improvements to revise curb lines as necessary to make the new plan feasible.
And I'm sorry to come back on this, but let's say for a market rate for a 1 bedroom, what kind of rates are we talking about? Do you all have that number?
I do not. I'm Con Growth
That's
here
fine.
with
That's fine.
Byfield Architecture. So
Great. So John, if you don't mind, just giving a brief overview of some of the comments from the design reviewer and just whatever might be outstanding with a focus on that.
Sure, and I'll just share my screen with the report. Colin, if you want to stop sharing. Good evening, everyone. So part of the package I think Katie sent out ahead of the meeting included this report by BFJ Planning. They've done several of the peer review design reviews for the agency. So they did the one for 19 Day Street here. You may have had a chance to take a look at it. But they just noted a handful things about the design that they thought could potentially be improved or expanded upon. So at the end of the document, they recommend approving the project, but with these conditions. Just quickly go over those conditions. So they're calling for more significant landscaping along the Day Street frontage. So right now the plan looks like it shows a green area that presumably is grass. And the peer reviewer thought that that could be an opportunity for more significant plantings, shade plantings in that area. And they called for coordination between the landscape plan and ground floor plan. It looked like there had been some updated architectural drawings submitted throughout this design review, and just the peer reviewer wanted to make sure that the drawings were coordinated. They also thought that the condition should be that the identification of tree wells for existing trees. I believe along Day Street here, there were some of the drawings that didn't show the existing street trees, so clarification of whether those trees will be demolished and replaced, or what's happening with that. Just sort of another coordination of drawing comment. The peer reviewer also thought there should be some fencing or landscape buffering on the western side of the property. So over on this end, where that distillery building will be demolished and replaced with new surface parking, they thought this would be an opportunity for some screening around the utility infrastructure here, and then the border of the property. Another item was the peer reviewer thought there should be a more prominent signage location. I believe right now there's a small sign proposed here. The peer reviewer thought the signage should be larger and located near the proposed lobby entrance, so that visitors could clearly see where to enter the building. The peer reviewer also thought there should be a clear description of all materials planned for the facade. And I believe with the presentation that Colin gave, it seemed like they responded to this item. And then also they called for an updated lighting plan for the site. It looked like the earlier lighting plan that was submitted wasn't updated with some of the latest architectural drawings that were submitted. And then I think one other outstanding item was that the bike parking was moved into the lobby of the new building. And the peer reviewer made note that there should maybe be a separate exterior area for electric bikes and scooters, not in an interior location. So maybe if Colin has a minute to kind of respond to any of these items, does he feel like they've addressed them? Are there anything that's outstanding, or any one of these that wouldn't be feasible to address? If not, the recommendation of BFJ planning was that the project be approved, but with these conditions to be addressed.
Before we go to that, can I just apologize, but I didn't see this in our packet. Was it from last month?
It's hyperlinked in the agenda.
Thank you.
Sure, and I can just jump in again. Colin Groth here, Byfield Architecture, Senior Associate, resident in Norwalk as well. Let me knock off a couple of these relatively easily. Tree wells, so tree wells were submitted. So I'm just going to say those were submitted on the plan. They were not shown previously. I believe he picked those up in the latest plan that was submitted. So he showed the grates. It was just he hadn't drawn them in prominently, so he fixed that in his the last revision to zoning. The fencing or landscape buffering on the western side of the site, that was also picked up. He's got the note here, which fence was slats, so he's addressed that along the property line, and you can kind of see that there's the entire length here along the fence. So basically screening the entire perimeter, and then down along the south side here where it's applicable. So the civil engineer, landscape architect picked that up. More prominent signage location, that was addressed by us in our revised submission. We called out these sign locations in the spandrel panels above the entry doors to the building. So that would be the signage location, much more responsive to the street. Description of materials, as you noted, that was provided by us. But back here, we described the major materials of the building, front and back. Update on lighting plan. I believe that was also, as you mentioned, that was an error. They had the wrong underlay when they did the photometrics, so they corrected that. Now they've coordinated that, and they showed the light scatter underneath the building as well, which I think was also missing in the previous plan. Well, that one is done. Coordination between landscape plan and ground floor. I believe that was also done in the last one, but that would continue to happen as the proposal moves forward into construction documents, and then more significant landscaping along Day Street. And that, I believe, was improved, but could be handled. Please. Sorry. That one. So we added some additional trees in this area. And I believe it is just a planted lawn with some additional ornamental trees. It is a relatively, low light area, so it has to be shade tolerant. Our plan's a little sparse, but we're not showing the landscaping. So we'd refer to his plan for that, the landscape architect's plan for that. We're just showing the perimeter of it. So as that area is green, but it is, as you can kind of see from the building here, you'll probably have some morning sun when the sun's coming up from the east, but as it goes towards the latter portion of the day, this is going to be in shade. So he has selected a shade tolerant species for there. And that's all I have for that. So we did increase the size of the shrubs, I believe, in response to that comment from what they made. If we scroll up there, I think he was referring to, because ours was essentially blank and just showing that blank palette, and we weren't showing the shrubs as we were the trees. But that is in the landscape plan, and that's the one that should be followed, not ours.
Great.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I think it's more for the discussion of the board. If there's any comments that you guys have.
I have a question. Oh, I've just lost my page. When I'm looking at the front of the building, you have the lobby that's there, and you have step up into that lobby. So that it's not ADA accessible from the front off of Day Street. You have to go around to the back to get street level to sidewalk level.
I can show you the route. Let me share. I just realized I probably wasn't sharing the screen when I was crossing stuff off, was I? So the plan. So the thought, you are somewhat correct in that you do need to kind of come into the site in order to get there. So you can come up and then cross over, and then you can enter the back of the leasing office. So there's an entry there adjacent to the ADA spaces. So
Right, but it's not ADA accessible off the street is my question.
Oh, no, it is. You'd come into the site here.
Well, I have to come into the back of the site, to the back of the building. You're not accessible to the front of the building. So a person in a wheelchair coming down Day Street still has to make that route around, all the way around to the back and come in that way.
Correct. That's kind of unavoidable though with the lobby configuration and trying to get all of the touch points and comply with the flood regulations. So it's like there's not enough room to get up the 11 feet to elevation 14 to meet the regulations there. So the easiest way was just to kind of come up where we were, providing a sense of entry into the site, and working towards the existing building lobby as well, and then creating a relationship between the accessible parking spaces within the site that we were required to provide, and putting the entry proximate to the accessible spaces. So you've got a high point here where they can cross within the site and then get into the backside. I know it's meeting the intent, or the letter, maybe not The intent as well as it could, but it's, we're doing the best we can with within the flood regulations and the design constraints of the site.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or John?
Colin, could you speak about the bike parking storage issue and whether it's all within the lobby, and if there's opportunities for like electric and bike and
Sure.
scooter parking?
At the moment, we're just showing the bicycle parking, yes, and, I'm not sharing again, am I? So the area that we're discussing is here, the bike storage. So this was, I believe, moved from previously it was kind of there. So we internalized it and provided some shelter parking, which is kind of how the bike parking is currently on site. There is no specific provision for electric bikes at the moment. That might change in the future. I can't speak to the owner's desire as to whether or not he's going to provide electrics in there for people to charge those things, but he may if that's if he sees that as a necessary thing to service his tenants. As far as why you'd locate electric bikes outside, I don't really have a comment on that. Either way, the buildings are sprinklered and fire protected, so the area under the building would be required to be fire protected, so there would be fire protection in place for any of the area underneath the building as well as the areas inside. So that would handle, the basics of any problems that might arise from a safety issue with a malfunctioning electric bike. But as it is, there's no current plan to provide special charging facilities for electric bikes or scooters or any of the like, or special storage capacity for those. Not that there couldn't be, but there's nothing specific at the moment.
So if I understand correctly, you've addressed all the points that were brought up by the design review.
John, are you frozen? Are you okay? There he is.
Was that me? I'm okay. Yes, I would say that we've addressed the points that were raised by the design
Right.
reviewer, and I think most of them were addressed going into the hearing. The resolution, to my knowledge, I think the only one that was really lingering in our plate was probably complying with signage and the mural, changing out the motif on that one facade that's on the property line to depict a mural as opposed to the faux windows. And everything else, I believe, is fairly standard for the zoning approval language to, file Mylars and coordinate and go through the certifications of flood hazard and sureties and submit the workforce housing plan. So I think those are all fairly standard conditions of approval.
Right. Any other questions? No other questions? Do we want to consider for approval the proposed design we've just been presented with? 19-day?
Commissioner Neri, can I just say, before I go up, just say thank you very much, commissioners, for hearing the presentation. It was a pleasure to present it to you, and thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to your findings.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that's going to cover this, Brian? No? We're done?
Nope.
I personally think the building is nice. It's in keeping with the front building, and it's nice in the neighborhood. So I don't know. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed design work for 19 Day Street. Do I have a second? No. Second, Lisa. All in favor? I assume no one else has any questions before we take a vote. Observations? No? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Looks unanimous. Thank you, Colin. We got a
Thank you very much.
next thing, item on the agenda for 5 business is item B. It's the, okay, somebody saying something? The Wall Street Place Development Project Construction Administration Services. Approve the executive director to execute any and all agreements related to the Wall Street Place Development Project. I'm hearing sounds. Brian,
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, great. So if you recall, we approved a $4.4 million loan, as support that was from city capital funds for the Wall Street Place redevelopment project, sort of provide funding for public infrastructure, specifically sidewalk improvements, some work in the roadway, various, utility relocation items. And in order, to do that work, the work is obviously going to be performed by the developer as part of that. But ultimately, we have a inspection and sort of a responsibility to make sure that work is being done properly. So we've been working with TMP, DPW, and obviously our office on a workflow that could, achieve that, given our respective capacities and, the scale of the project. So what we've done is put out an RFP for construction administration services. The plan is to use a third party, given the sort of temporary durational nature of the project. And they would be providing on-site inspection services to oversee sort of day-to-day field activity, conducting routine inspections for compliance with approved plans and the specs and the city standards, working with DPW, our office, and TMP to make sure that the developer is performing the work that's required under our loan agreement. And then obviously just sort of, making sure that the quality is there and it's in line, so we don't have any issues. This would be in addition to the developer's responsibility to make sure that they're submitting accurate and timely records. And effectively, what this construction service would do would allow us to have, a qualified engineer taking a look at the work, making sure it's being done right, and making sure that we're paying for things as we've agreed to pay for them. The funding source is the CDBG program. This is an eligible activity under our public infrastructure component of that. So that money will be coming out of those funds. And to the tune of about, we're working to sort of value engineer the proposal. We got proposals back that were a little higher than expected. I think it came in around 180,000 for the whole project. It's obviously a $4.4 million project. But we've been working with TMP to sort of value engineer that back to probably about 150, but do it more based off a day rate with weekly look aheads. So that we're trying to minimize the ultimate expense, but that's the sort of ballpark that we're working with. I think you might be on mute, John, if you're trying to.
Is there any questions, observations, questions? No?
Brian, what do we know of the Wall Street Place project being on time right now?
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're made aware, it's moving at the pace that we've expected, actually. I mean, they broke ground and they're getting things done over there. In terms of our piece was solely focused on the infrastructure aspect of it. But as far as I understand, they're moving at the pace they agreed to.
I guess my question is, are we in one of those situations where if we end up paying more because we go longer because they go longer? Or is there a trigger within this that makes the developer responsible for any overages at that point?
It's exactly that. We've agreed to 4.4 and that's it. And that's that's a loan to them. So this is ultimately, it's we don't have any sort of risk.
But I mean, for the construction, the construction management is on top of the 4.4. It's baked into the 4.4.
Yeah, that's on top of the 4.4 ultimately because it is city infrastructure. This is public right-of-way improvements.
Well, what I'm saying is if that stuff's held up and we end up that team, if you're on a day rate, that goes longer than what we originally are budgeting for.
Right.
Is there a trigger that the developer, if the lateness is caused by the developer, does the developer
It's more going to be, I mean, the work will happen in terms of the quantity. If there is a little bit of an overage, yes, we would be covering it, but I think
Okay.
they're inspecting a very fixed amount of work. So that whatever that occurs, it shouldn't increase the overall cost too much.
Okay.
Yeah, we were going to go for a fixed rate to just avoid exactly that, but I think we're going to end up spending more money if we went with a fixed rate than if we did the sort of day rate approach.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions, observations? Do I have a motion to approve the executive director to execute any and all agreements related to the Wall Street Place Development Project construction?
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Kelly. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Go on to our next item, which is the work program update. Brian.
Yeah, so I'll provide a general update. And if there's I'll provide a little extra detail too, just for David to catch you up in terms of these specific projects. And also just another offer, if you want to have a catch-up call afterwards, another day, just let me know. I'm happy to go through things in further detail as needed. If I speak too lightly on a particular topic. So I'll start with our work around the South Norwalk train station. So as we discussed at the last meeting, we've closed on that transaction. So the land disposition agreement is moving forward in accordance with its provisions, and the construction is well underway. It's nice to see that it's already, they've broken ground and they're starting to do some vertical work. But in terms of our responsibility still, we have the Community Challenge grant and the Community Investment Fund grants for infrastructure support in that area. So we've been concurrently working to finalize designs for the roadway network and the improvements around that. So looking at, and David's just so this is to support the public-private partnership we did for the 200 mixed-use residential units at Chestnut and in Henry Street over there. So
Yeah, I
that's
remember I was still on the council when that.
great. Yeah, so it's moving.
I know the project.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so they ended up finalizing that transaction. So they've purchased the property, they're doing the construction. We received $6 million community challenge grant and now also a $3 million community investment fund grant to help support area infrastructure. So the first two roads that we're going to be looking to bid out in the design sequence is Station Place, because reconstructing the road right in front of the train station, and then also Monroe Street. One of the encumbering factors on that is the replacement of a police gate, which is required for the operations of Chestnut Street. So we've been working with the police department, working with TMP and everybody, but that's moving along very nicely. That is happening in the interim state while we wait for the vertical construction to be complete at 30 Monroe. And then from there, we'll be completing the work along Chestnut and Henry Street that's contemplated for that area under that grant. Specifically waiting because, we don't want the vertical construction activities to ruin our investment and roll over sidewalks, break things, and XYZ. So that's sort of the sequence on that specific project. I can speak to RAISE, and we received a $14 million RAISE grant from the Biden administration originally, and now we're navigating the transition to the Trump administration. A number of these grants have been canceled nationwide. Ours is fortunately still in consideration. We were actually just invited to basically modify our scope to be further more in accordance with the current administration priorities. Fortunately, our project was very driven by safety. There was a lot of safety incidents along MLK. This is the corridor that we were going to be focusing the investment on. So I think they're giving us a chance to, sort of modify that. We've been going back and forth with our consultant, going back and forth with US DOT. But I still have hope that we're gonna, make it through. It is a very, challenging time in terms of things changing often and regularly and trying to figure out, what the new normal is. But we've been getting good guidance from our US DOT, our partners at US DOT, and we're still in the running. So we've updated our grant agreement. That's currently at the federal highways. He expects more back and forth, but it's still, the money has not been rescinded or anything to that nature. And yeah, so I'm happy to entertain any questions, but that's the main updates for the work around the train station. One thing I can add is we are in the process of closing out the brownfield assistance grant that we were able to do in support of that transaction. So that work, the remediation work is all done. If there's no question on that, I could talk, you know, you could feel free to stop me and go back to anything, but heading up a little bit north, Webster Lot, as you know, we're been discussing redevelopment of that. We've been going back and forth with potential developers. The latest update, we went out for RFP, for another round of developers, for negotiations. Those responses came back October 24th, and we just completed interviews today. So we'll be able to update in more detail once we kind of get through this whole procurement, negotiation phase. But that's moving, and we've been concurrently advancing the remediation plan for the site, trying to start, working with our EPA dollars to get it cleaned up, and also just general. We've been doing a little bit of analysis. We actually just kicked off a parking study today. What we want to do is, as we go into the development and the negotiations in this next phase, is to really work with a consultant, identify the right size and the right amount of parking spaces, so we're not over constructing or under constructing parking for the site, given the fact that we already have to replace 650 public parking spaces on site to open up the development. And then if you're talking about 430 units, it could be, a 1,200 space garage if it was not sort of examined and looked at. So we received a $750,000 US DOT grant under their innovative financing program, and we're using those funds to pay for this parking study, some financial analysis, and then ultimately some of the legal expenses related to the project. So that's the update on Webster. And then if we continue, the other project we're working on is the Reconnecting Communities grant. We've been holding this project for a little bit because in a perfect world, it was connected very nicely to our RAISE project, and we didn't want to have to procure two separate consultants to kind of sort of look at the same, same corridor. This one's more focused on the connection of Wall Street and South Norwalk and the historical impact, that's been, the history of all that, hence the Reconnecting Communities program. But we've been giving guidance now with the uncertainty around RAISE and the pressure they're feeling at the federal level to advance existing projects such as reconnecting, to move that forward independent of RAISE. So it's not the end of the world. It's just obviously not the optimal situation from an administrative perspective. Also probably from a design, I mean, you're going to have some additional coordination that's going to be required. But so what we're moving now is we're moving to the RFP phase so we can start advancing that work with that grant. And then finally, in terms of the development in the urban core, the Pinnacle project, I think we spoke a little bit about it last week. The Piper, it's up, it's running, but we still have a second phase of infrastructure assistance that we have planned in that area from some of the state grants that we received to do the sidewalks around Orchard, and then sort of the other sort of adjacent area of the Piper development to help support the neighborhood residents, the existing neighborhood residents, not just the new development. And that is in current design. We're kind of finalizing what that's going to look like and hoping to bid that out for work in the spring. And I guess the only other one I would want to update you on that has significant movement in this last month here is the trail design that we're doing over on 130 East Avenue. So we were finally able to secure an agreement for site access to conduct geotechnical investigation on the trail. It'll be a nice boardwalk feature behind 130 East Ave as it's currently contemplated. And we basically now are in the process of finalizing the designs, getting the sort of infrastructure and amenities in place, and then we're going to be submitting that for permitting very shortly. We do anticipate a relatively long permitting period, given DEEP's, obvious interest in the waterway, but I think it'll ultimately result in a really meaningful project.
We're working on a project at 148 East Avenue as well. Correct?
So yeah, we got the grant for 130 and 148 East, and I apologize. That's a great catch. 148 East is what I'm referring to. I'm so sorry. The 130 East is the one we've had trouble getting participation by the property owner.
Okay.
The medical building, I apologize. Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. So that's the high level updates. Obviously, we have the typical administrative grant management things, but I think those are the larger projects. We also actually are finalizing another round of design on the Sono Wharf, the sort of park there on Washington, right by the bridge and the movie theater where it used to be. We've had to hold things a little bit for DOT to get back to us in terms of what they'd be willing to accept given the Walk Bridge project, but we've gotten that guidance and we're moving to finalize those designs as well.
All right.
Brian, just a quick question on the 130 then. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel of being able to get to an agreement with the owner? Because it
I
kind of
think-
messes up the whole plan if that piece doesn't get developed.
As based on every political, every aspect, everything we've chased down, I feel like we've gone past the end of the tunnel. We are well beyond the tunnel, unfortunately. So we're having to look at different options,
Would
unfortunately.
it be like coming back out to the street and then going back down to the
Yeah.
Riverwalk?
That's exactly it. I mean, I think it always leaves the possibility open if ownership changes or whatever there is, but apparently there's a history there and it's quite challenging.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Comments?
I just have one. I don't know, Brian. I know we spoke about maybe a couple of months ago about Leonard Street. Anything's going on with that?
Yeah, the housing authority's gotten more involved on that specific side of things. Are you talking about 913 or you're talking about 25? The red building?
Yes.
Yeah, the red, so the housing authority took over that project. So I'm not quite sure. I could try to get an update for you, but they've taken over all of Mutual Housing's sort of portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they're helping them out, trying to navigate. I know they had some ideas and proposals. That one, I looked at that one too on behalf of them, but I think I'm happy to follow up with Adam Bovilsky and get you an update if that would help.
Yeah, just to see what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. No more questions? Okay, any new business, old business we want to bring up? Before I ask for an adjournment, thank you, David, for joining us. I hope it was helpful, this first meeting. Have questions? Yeah, if you have any questions, call Brian.
I'll call
Don't
Brian.
hesitate. I'm around.
I'll call Brian.
You'll come to understand that we have multiple sets of books and the reasons for it and the transfer of funds back and forth between them. It'll take a while, but you'll come to understand it. Eugene, could help you, direct you through the maze of different entities, but
Okay.
seeing no other comments, no observations, no updates, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Lisa? I'll second it. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Bye.
night,
Good
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Steve.